Hey, yo, guys! Lesson 24 in our fraction unit. I can decompose and compose fractions greater than 1 to express them in various forms. All right, let's get started. Well, thank you, my Fortnite friend. And yes, let's get started right now. I wanted to show you we are going to look at improper fractions, or fractions as we call greater than 1. Like 8/3 is considered an improper fraction, or a fraction greater than 1. And we want to get them to be, it's equivalent to a mixed number. And a mixed number has a whole number attached to a fraction. So we're going to be able to compose and decompose fractions that are greater than the 1 to get them into mixed numbers. All right, rename each fraction as a mixed number by decomposing into two parts as well, it's not shown below, but model the decomposition with a number line and a number bond. So we have 11/3, and we're going to use a number bond and a number line to decompose this fraction greater than 1. So basically we could do this. We could do 9/3 plus 2/3 gives us 11/3. And 9/3 is really just saying there's 3 wholes plus a little part, which is 2/3, which gives us 3 2/3. So right over here saying it wants it in 2 parts. But you also could do it this way to help you out. So let's look at 11/3 and say, all right, how many holes can we get in there? Well, there's 3/3, which is 1 hole. Then we can take another hole, which would give us 6/3, and we still can keep going, and we can get another 3/3. So that would be 8/3. And we are still, so we still have, we have 3/3, but we have 3 groups of 3/3. That would give us 9/3, just like we did up here. Here's 9/3, here's a group, here's a group, and here's a group. Just like we did in the previous lesson, 3 groups of 3, that would be 9/3. But what's left over is 2/3, so we would add 2/3 to this. And guys, basically this is showing this right up here, just another way of showing it. And then if we had to create a number line, we would start with 0, and we would need a hole and another 2 for another hole, and then show 3, and then we can add another one, 4. So since we're talking about thirds, we're going to break it up into thirds. So 1, 2, and the 1 becomes the third. 1, 2, and the 2 becomes the next third, and continue it. All right, good. Now we're going to actually have to place this. So if we start on 0, we want to go 9/3. So let's start counting. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 4/3, 5/3, 6/3, 7/3, 8/3, 9/3. So 9/3 does equal a whole. That's how we get this 3. But we're not supposed to stop there, are we? No, we're supposed to go to 11. So here's 9/3, 10/3, 11/3. So it's 3 wholes and 1/3, 2/3. So that's how we get 3 2/3. So how it models is that we're jumping all the way to thirds, because that represents 9/3. And then we're just making a little jump here to show 2/3. All right, continuing this by renaming each fraction as a mixed number by decomposing it into 2 parts. Well, we're not going to decompose it in 2 parts. We can try it a different way, just like I did before. But if we broke this down 13/4, the fourths, it's broken up into fourths. So how many holes can we get up to close to 13? Well, there is 4/4 gives us 1 hole. 4/4 gives us another hole. So right now we're at 8/4. And let's get another 4 fourths. That gives us now 12 fourths. Interesting. So now we're at 12 fourths. So we are close to 13, but not quite. So we're just going to add the 1/4 because we have 1/4 left over. So just by looking at this, we could say there are 3 wholes and 1/4. Now if we wanted to show the two parts, we can again show 13 fourths equals, pull 12 fourths out because that's close to being 13, and we're left with 1/4. And when we say 12 fourths, we're really trying to say that it's 3 wholes, and then we have a quarter left over. Well, how does this look like on a number line? Well, the number line, we're going to begin with 0, and we're going to have 1 and a 2 and a 3, and we can end it with a 4. Doesn't really matter. And then we're going to say, all right, we got to place this and represent this on a number line. And so since we are working with fourths, we have to divide this number line into fourths. So let's get our little tick marks here. 1, 2, 3, and the 1 becomes the 4th. 1, 2, 3, the 2 becomes the next 4th. 1, 2, 3, 3 becomes the next 4th. And 1, 2, 3, and the 4 becomes the next 4th. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the 0. And since we are showing here, we could go 4 fourths. That would give us 1 whole. The next 4 fourths, 2 wholes. The next 4 fourths, 3 fourths. And we're left with 1/4, and then we would just go one right over here. So that's how we can represent this part. But how do we represent this part? Well, 12 fourths. We would count 1/4, 2 fourths, 3 fourths, 4 fourths, 5 fourths, 6 fourths, 7 fourths, 8 fourths, 9 fourths, 10 fourths, 11 fourths, 12 fourths. There it is, 3. 3 groups, just like we had up here. And then a little bit over. So let's represent this one all the way over to 3 wholes, which represents 12 fourths. 12 fourths is equivalent to 3. And then one little jump to show 1/4. So that's how we represent this problem on a number line. All right, we're going to continue using the same directions with 17 thirds. And with 17 thirds, we are going to show the 2 different ways of breaking this down. And we want to get how many wholes can we get in this? Well, we can, again, since we're doing thirds, we can go, that's 1 whole. This would give us 2 wholes. This would give us 3 wholes, because 3 times 3 is 9. We're still not close to 17. We can take another whole, and that would be 4 times 3, because there's 4 groups of 3 thirds, and that would give us 12. Still not close enough. I mean, we're close, but not there. Another 3 thirds, and that would bring us to 15. So I definitely believe that we are close to 17 now, because we have 5 groups of 3 thirds, which would give us 15. And then we've got 2 thirds left over. We couldn't make another whole out of that. So basically we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups, 5 wholes with 2 thirds. Or we could actually say how many wholes we have. 5 and 3 in the numerator. That would give us 15 thirds, plus what's left over is 2 thirds. That's 17 thirds, and which is equal to 5 and 2 thirds. Well, how would this look like on a number line? Well, number line, we're going to begin with a 0, and then a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's end with the 6, since we're going to be going after 5. Now, since we're talking about the thirds, we want to cut this number line into the thirds. So we have 1, 2, the whole is a third. Next one, 2, the 2 is the next third. And there we go. So now let's start placing 15 thirds. So let's count it. We got 1 third, 2 thirds, 3 thirds, 4 thirds, 5 thirds, 6 thirds, 7 thirds, 8 thirds, 9 thirds, 10 thirds, 11 thirds, 12 thirds, 13 thirds, 14 thirds, 15 thirds. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, there's that. But we are not done because we have to get to 17 thirds. And we go 16 thirds, 17 thirds. So that would give us 5 holes, because we're after the 5, not quite to the 6 yet. 5 holes, which is right there. And we're left right there with 2 thirds. So what would this look like? Well, we're going to jump all the way over to the 5. That represents 15 thirds. And then we just got a little bit left over here, which would end up over here to being 2 thirds. So our answer is 15 thirds, 2 thirds, which give us 5 and 2 thirds. Convert each fraction to a mixed number and show your work in the example. Model with a number line. So we have 11 thirds, and we're going to kind of do the same thing that we've been doing already. And I'm going to kind of break this down and say, all right, well, how many wholes can we get from 11 thirds? Well, since we're talking about thirds, we've got 3 thirds plus another 3 thirds, which would give us 6 thirds. So we still can go. We're getting closer. 3 thirds. Hey, it's 9 thirds. It's closer. If I added on another 3 thirds, that would give me 12 thirds. So I know that I went over. So I would have to get rid of this one. And now I know that since I'm dealing with 9 thirds, 11 take away 9 leaves me with 2 thirds left over. So how many holes do I have? I have 1, 2, 3. I have 3 holes and then 2 thirds. Okay, so now let's see if we could do this another way. We could actually say 9 thirds plus 2 thirds gives us 11 thirds. And also it's also equal to 3 and 2 thirds. There's 3 holes and 3 ninths, but we have left over 2 thirds. How would this look like on a number line? Because we need to show number lines in this lesson. We are going to start off with 0. And then we've got a 1. We have a 2. We have a 3. And we'll have a 4. Since we're talking about thirds, we're going to break up this number line into thirds. So we've got 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And now we're going to go up and count 11 thirds. So we go 1 third, 2 thirds, 3 thirds, 4 thirds, 5 thirds, 6 thirds, 7 thirds, 8 thirds, 9 thirds, 10 thirds, 11 thirds. So we're after the whole number of 3. So that will give us 3 holes. And we have a fraction of 2 thirds. We're not quite there yet to the 4. We're close to being to a 4 holes, but not yet. We got 1 more third left to go. So our answer is 3 and 2 thirds. So we could go like this. We could go, that's 3 thirds, that's a hole. There's another hole. Here's another hole, so that shows 3 groups of 3 thirds. And we didn't get all the way to 4. We got close to it. We stopped at 2 thirds. So now this is showing us this is also equivalent to 11 thirds. So this means that we are at 3 and 2 thirds. Okay, we're still going to follow the same directions. Now it's going to be with 13 halves. So we want to pull out as many holes as we can from 13 halves. And when we do that, we're going to get 12 halves. Okay, 12 halves plus 1 half would give us 13 halves. We can also say this is equal to 6 half. Another way we can do it is keep showing 2 halves. 2 halves plus 2 halves. That would give us 4 halves. Not close. 2 halves. Still not close. Another 2 halves. That would give us 8 halves. We're getting a little bit closer. 2 halves. That would give us 10 halves. Still close. And we wrote another one. That would give us 12 halves. And we can't add another one because that would give us 14 halves. So we're left with just 1 half. Now if we see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups of 2 halves. And then we're left with 1 half because we couldn't really make another hole because then we need another half. So how does this look like as a... Well, actually, let me just go back and say since we have 6 groups, we can actually show this 13 halves. Remember when I said 6 groups of, that means multiplication. So we can actually say 6 times 2 over 2 plus a half is really 6 and a half. Just like we said, because 6 groups of 2 halves plus 1 half is 6 and a half. Now what would this look like as a number line? Well, a number line, we are going to start with 0, and we're going to have, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, now since we're only going to have halves, I'm just going to make these little tick marks in between to represent a half. Alright, so where would these go? Well, we count up by halves. 13 halves, let's try it. We've got 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves, 6 halves, 7 halves, 8 halves, 9 halves, 10 halves, 11 halves, 12 halves. There's our 12 halves. Look up here. This is our 12 halves, which represents 6. And then one more 13 halves. So 13 halves would be right about here. And that represents, since we're after the whole number of 6, it becomes 6 and then 1 half. So this part right here is 13 halves. So how did we go? How did we do this? Well, we did. Starting with the 0, we went to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we ended up over to the next half, which is right here. So that shows us we went up by a hole, another hole. See, because 2 halves is another hole. 2 halves is a hole. 2 halves, 2 halves, 2 halves. This last one was just a half. So 6 groups of 2 is 6. Six groups of 2 halves is 6 and a half. Okay, so now we're going to convert this fraction into a mixed number. We want to be able to see how many wholes we can get from 14 thirds. So since we're talking about thirds, we need to use thirds in it. So we've got 3 thirds. 3 thirds, that would give us 6 thirds. We're not close. 3 thirds, that would give us 9 thirds. And another third would give us 12 thirds. But we're still, we're close. Let's see if I can add another third, another 3 thirds. And that would give us 15 thirds. And we have to make sure that we're doing 14 thirds. So we are a little bit over here. So I need to get rid of this 3 thirds. And since I have 14 thirds, that means I have 2 thirds left over. So how many groups do I have? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 4 thirds. So 4 times 3 thirds. And I need to add on the additional fraction that's left over, which would be 2 thirds, which would give us all 4 groups, 4 wholes, and 2 thirds left over. Well, how does this look like with a number line? Well, we have 0, we have 1 whole, 2 wholes, 3 wholes, 4, and 5. Okay, so now what we want to show is we want to show this 14 thirds on a number line. And since we are doing it in thirds, it's thirds, we need to cut this up into thirds. So let's go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And we're going to place our 14 thirds on the number line. So let's count that. Got 1 thirds, 2 thirds, 3 thirds, 4 thirds, 5 thirds, 6 thirds, 7 thirds, 8 thirds, 9 thirds, 10 thirds, 11 thirds, 12 thirds, 13 thirds, 14 thirds. We're almost at a whole, but not quite. So right here is 14 thirds. So let me write that down. We've got 14 thirds right there. And now we're going to show how much groups that we're going up. Well, let's try that. So from 0 to 1, we went up 3 thirds. That's 1 whole. Another whole, 3 thirds. Another whole, that's 3 thirds. And our last whole, 3 thirds, because that brought us to 12 thirds. We still had 2 thirds left over that we had to go to. If we continued, we'd end up at a whole. We needed another third to get there. We need 1 more third to get to the whole. We're not quite there. So this shows 4 and 2 thirds on the number line. All right, continuing with our last example tonight. Convert the fraction to a mixed number. All right, so let's say we just wanted to do this without making a number line. We could do that. We could convert this fraction, this fraction that's greater than 1, into a mixed number. And how we would do that is we want to pull out all the wholes. All right, so let's try to see if we could pull out all the wholes from this. So we're breaking it up into 8, so that's what we're focusing on, the 8s. So 8 eighths, that would give us a whole. 8 eighths, that's 16. 8 eighths, that's 24. 8 eighths, that is 4, so that's 32. We are very close. So we've got 4 groups, 4 wholes that were in 37 eighths. And we've got how many left over? Well, since we had 32 eighths, to get to 37 would be 5 eighths left over. We would need 3 more eighths to get to the next whole. So how many groups do we have? We have 4 groups of 8 eighths, which would give us 32 eighths, and we have 5 eighths left over, which would be 37 eighths. Hey, yo, good job. Champions train and losers complain. Hope there's no complainers out there. All right, you need to rename the fraction as a mixed number and showing how you can break it up into 2 parts. And you're going to model it using a number line and a number bond. And I want to see your work tomorrow. 15 halves, do it again. Decompose it into 2 parts. figured out what the mixed number is, and I want you to model it by using a number line and a number bond. And I want to see your work tomorrow. 27 fifths, convert it to a mixed number and model it with a number line. 27 fifths, what is it as a mixed number? I want to see your work tomorrow, guys. And our last one, convert this fraction to a mixed number, show your work, and model it with a number line. And again, I want to see your work tomorrow. Yo, 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 courage, be a winner, be a champion, be courageous today. So come on, guys, always show your courage, be brave, never give up. Have a wonderful night.